coming out tonight. I greatly appreciate it. This is an IEEE Florida West Coast section presentation tonight. What we're going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about projects, and we're going to be talking about project management. As you are all probably very well aware, anytime you talk about any sort of large-scale engineering efforts, you start talking about multiple groups of people being involved in it, and multiple groups of people attempting, sometimes successfully and sometimes not so successfully, to work together. Now, as engineers, we know very well what we need to do, right? We're experts, we went to school, we've got training, maybe we've got some sort of certification in what we're good at, and we do a great job of it. What we need to keep in mind, of course, is that our part of the overall big thing is just one part of it. I know when I got started working, I worked on the F-18, but I worked on, it was like an automated landing system component of it. And I was very, very proud of it, but I was also highly aware that there was a very large organization behind me with a lot of people who did other things. And my part was only a small drop in the bucket, literally, when you put an airplane together. It was an important part, I would like to think, but just a small part. And that was sort of my introduction back in the day to project management, right? And project management and project managers are sort of how things get done in the world of engineering. As engineers, we have a tendency to focus on our stuff and expertise in our particular area, which is good. But tonight what I want to do is I want to expand your world. I want to sort of open your eyes, make sure that you're aware that what you're doing and your work and contribution is actually part of a much larger project that's going on that has its own fine set of subtleties and complexities and challenges. These projects do not manage themselves. It takes talented and gifted people such as Patrick Duffy, who's with us tonight. Thank you very much for coming, Patrick. We have another project manager, Mr. Allen, who will be joining us shortly. When I last talked with him, he was on the causeway. So he is making steady progress towards us. It's just Tampa traffic is fighting him. So he will join us, and he will come up here when he arrives. Patrick, maybe a good way to start tonight is perhaps to introduce you to our audience tonight and give them a little bit of your personal background, sir.
All right. Yeah, my name is Patrick Duffy. I've been out of school and working in the arena of industrial projects for 25 years. The first 10 of those years I worked for one of the world's larger AE construction firms. It was a conglomeration of companies. At our height, I think we were the third largest. It was called Raytheon Engineers and Constructors. 15 years ago, I came to Tampa Electric. And I've been working here in energy supply. So I do work and projects in our power plants. So it's still in that heavy industrial setting. I've done a little bit of work on the poles and the wires, but only for a year. So mostly it's the power plant type stuff.
So are you talking about like generators and turbines and stuff like that? Things that make electricity.
Things that make, exactly, power plants. And these days, power plants aren't just turbines and generators. The ancillary stuff, the pollution control equipment, takes up even a larger footprint than the power block. So there's a lot of different types of projects you get to work on when you're doing power plant projects. There's heavy mechanical, heavy electrical. There's civil projects. It really runs the gamut. For those first 10 years at Raytheon, I was a cost guy. I watched the money. I was a scheduler. I was an estimator. I was a field engineer. Worked on projects really in many countries in many different sizes, mostly in the petrochemical, specialty chemical arena, ranging. A small job for us would be $10 million. Medium-sized typical job was like $100 million. The largest job I ever worked on was $1 billion refinery addition. And that was in '98, so that would be probably like $2 billion.
I was going to say, yes, it just gets more expensive.
So, here at Tampa Electric, what I've been responsible for today averages between $150 and $200 million a year in projects, and in a lot of maintenance projects. Some of these power plants are kind of old, so we're refurbishing major components. It's like capitalized maintenance. But then there's also plant improvement projects where we might introduce a new process. And then occasionally we build a new power plant.
Now, Patrick, when you went to school, you were going to school going, wow, I'm going to be a project manager, right?
No.
Okay, so what did you get your original degree in, sir?
I got my degree in physics, and
That explains a lot for the project management, right? It's like
Yeah.
things moving around.
well, and okay, so even further back in my background, I grew up in this industry. My dad worked for Bechtel, the world's premier. I think that they're the best.
At project management?
At project management and at large construction. They
Okay.
built the Hoover Dam. They've got a resume that's just impressive as all get out. And when you're a project manager for Bechtel, you move every 2 years. So we moved every 2 years. And
So your dad was a project
my
manager?
dad was a project
Okay,
manager. It was in my blood. And when you graduate with a 4-year degree in physics and you're kind of sick of school and you want to go to work, you don't go to work at the Jet Propulsion Laboratories that are at NASA, which is what you're dreaming of when you're getting a physics degree. So I went to work in construction, and I loved it. So I didn't go get my PhD in physics, which was the plan. I stayed in construction. And I think for me, it was the right thing to do. I really enjoy construction and engineering and project management.
So that, I mean, it just must be very odd to bump into a guy in construction who's very good at physics, right? Going, I wouldn't do that if I were you. I've resolved the forces on that system.
And in my career, I've done that once.
Have you? Okay.
I did. I was very young, and some guys came to me, and you wouldn't do it this way anymore because there's all sorts of guidelines. But we were making a lift with a crane, and they had come up with a rigging plan, and they had this triangle. And said, I can calculate those.
Yeah, that's right. There you go.
The free body diagram on that. So at one time in my career,
Yeah,
I
that's-
actually used a little bit of physics.
4 years of college, that's what it was all
Yes,
for. So-
exactly.
Well, so when you went to work for Bechtel, you were actually working in construction. You weren't necessarily doing project management back in the day, right?
I didn't start as a project manager. I think almost no one does, and really, I would say almost no one should.
Right, yes, but you gently eased into it, would that be the right way? How did you become a project manager eventually? So,
Okay.
that's not where you started.
No.
So, that's actually, I apologize, folks, I want to stress this on the end. So, Patrick is a project manager, right? So he has a very successful career doing that. You have a career doing something else. It's entirely possible for an engineer to become a project manager. You have the engineering background. If you acquire the skills and techniques needed to be a project manager, you can actually be a killer project manager, right? Because you can do project management and you understand the engineering side of it. So feel free to ask questions tonight and stuff like that about what it takes to be that. Patrick has agreed to answer those types of questions. But anyway, sorry Patrick, so back to you. So you started out, you're happily working in the construction industry and you're
Yes.
not a project manager,
Correct.
right? Okay.
So I was, my first job, I started in the field, I was measuring what was being installed, quantities, counting quantities.
Okay.
I was, and doing a lot of other odds and ends, but that was my primary role, and trying to estimate what the job was gonna cost to complete. So it's called a field cost engineer, and kind of learning how it all works. I kept doing that for a while, but also had an opportunity to be a scheduler, so I was the guy that was actually putting the schedule together and coordinating with engineers to.
That's what they called it, a scheduler, right?
Scheduler,
Okay,
yes.
and that's like when we do what? Is that a good way of calling what a scheduler is?
It's when we do what, and it's.
Pour concrete, put up
Yes.
wall.
Yes, and it's really when you're building the schedule, you're making a network, a logical network, you're connecting activities, and you're using logic to do that, and you're estimating durations, and when you do that well, you hit the calculate button, and it tells you how long your project's supposed to be, and then you kind of track your progress against that. So I did some of that. Then I started working in estimating, where I was working for a company where we're selling our services and trying to win jobs. We're competing for jobs, so we're estimating them and putting bids in. But through these years, this is a span of about 10 years, I always had my eye. I thought, I want to be a project manager. That's the best job in the industry I'm in. That was my view of it, that's the job to have.
So you were in a universe where you were orbiting, so to speak, project managers. They were there, you
Yes.
saw them, and you saw what they were doing.
Yes, and I was working for them.
Makes
You know,
sense.
really, when you think of who's your project management team, it's the project manager, the scheduler, the cost guy, and they are all together the project management team. Then you have the engineers, the engineering team, you have procurement people, you have construction people, you have safety people, you got all these disciplines. But so I was sort of in that arena of the project management team.
So you're a member of the team, you weren't
Yeah.
necessarily the project manager, but
Right.
you were close and you were, I guess you had a chance to observe, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and I was aspiring to be that. And I was never a project manager at Raytheon.
Okay, gotcha.
So I got hired here at Tampa Electric to be a project controls person, and then an opportunity came up, and here at Tampa Electric, when a job is open, you can bid on it. You know, everybody says, hey, I want that job. So I bid on a project management job and got it, and so here, for the last 15 years, I was a project manager.
Now,
And then,
there was a little subtlety to what you just said there. You joined Tampa Electric as a project controller? And that's different from a project manager, is that
yes,
right?
I'm sorry, so project controls are it's the cost and schedule and estimating
Like
functions
the financial guy,
primarily.
right, okay.
Yes, money and time is what the project controls guy is, and he's sort of the, you know, hopefully he's the right hand of the project
I was
manager.
gonna say, because those are important parts of project
Yes.
management, right? Okay.
And, you know, on a really small project, you don't have a project controls guy,
No.
the project manager has to do it. But we have a large enough capital program here, if we're doing $100 or $200 million a year of work, it justifies a few project managers, a few cost engineers, a few schedulers, so that's kind of how we're built here.
Which actually brings up really, so you work at Tampa Electric today. How many project managers work at Tampa Electric right now?
Yes. In the energy supply arena, we have a manager of the project management group, and then he has 3 project managers working for him, and then there's one who's off on his own. So we essentially have 4 active
Okay.
project managers.
Okay, excellent. And so you're in one part of the company. How many other parts of the company are there like yours? Is there like 12 other parts?
No, really there's one other part, which is the delivery side, the poles and the wires and the substations.
So if you have 4, we can even guesstimate that they have 4, so maybe at Tampa Electric, there's roughly somewhere maybe between 8 and 10 people
Yes.
who have the title of project manager.
Well, yes, and then, okay, so let's add IT in, because they have project
Good point,
managers, so then
excellent.
maybe there's another half a dozen or so.
So we think you have to 15-ish or
Yes,
so.
and then we also have a gas company, People's Gas.
That's right.
We just recently purchased a New Mexico gas, and I really
Who
don't
knows?
have any
Who knows?
clue.
There's one guy there, one
Yeah.
overworked, stressed out.
So yeah, in the teens of project managers probably.
Which is impressive because Tampa Electric, as far as their expenditure on doing stuff every year is what, millions?
Hundreds of millions.
Hundreds of millions, so you have 15 people
For project work.
managing hundreds of millions of dollars worth of projects, so that's some serious, dollars flowing in, flowing out. and stuff like
Yes.
that.
Yes,
My check.
our department, our project management group, our
Uh-huh.
engineering and construction
Of
project
3
management
or 4.
group spends more money for Tampa Electric than any other
Oh, you're number one.
department
You're number one.
in the company
Wow.
when it comes to capital.
It's the big end of project
Well,
wrap-up parties, right?
Yes, yes.
Bacon,
The
bacon
wild,
wrap
yes,
truck.
the wild parties and the incredible benefits. But really, it's really just a matter of, power plants are expensive things.
Yes.
They got big, expensive equipment in them, so.
Now, you had mentioned to us that, so let's just take a look at last year, 2014, for Kicks and Grins. How many different projects did you work on last year, just to give us sort of a feel for what your life is like, I guess my people would say?
Okay.
Ish.
It's just, every year we have, it's usually between 50 and 100 projects.
For your department?
For our department.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what 14 was, but it's usually in that range. The small ones are a few $100,000.
So that could put you somewhere in the neighborhood of roughly 20-ish projects a year, potentially, right?
Per person?
Per person, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow, okay, so that'll keep you humming right there. Now, I love a very organized life, and I love it when you start a year and you say, I have 100 projects, and you dole out 20 or 25 per person, and then they work on it during the year, they get them done, and then at the start of the next year, I give you like another. Is that the beautiful, organized simplicity of your life? Is
No.
that-
Not at all.
Continuous.
Yeah, it's continuous,
It's
exactly.
continuous, you don't-
And we do know, there's really good, fairly firm targets about when we want projects to be done.
Okay.
But some projects might be very easy, very simple. They may only take 6 months, and some projects may take 3 years because you're ordering a turbine that you can't get for 3 years. So we try to start them when we need to based on
Delivery.
deliveries. Primarily, we look at the equipment lead time. So No, it's nothing like that. And, but it is all integrated. We have to look at the business needs and what kind of projects the business needs. And we estimate all their cash flows and we slice it by year. And we say, okay, there is a capital budget for this year made up of all of these projects, but they're not all starting at the same time and finishing within the calendar year. We just take a slice of all the projects and say, looks like $180 million this year, and we try to stick to that number. And some projects may get canceled, and other projects may get added into as things change. But we do have annual capital targets we strive to meet.
Which actually, so that brings up an issue. All projects are not created equal, right? So I would assume that you probably have some projects that are high priority, probably, I don't know, the CEO has promised it to whatever, and some that are probably lower priority, right?
Yes.
And, I guess priorities can change as, hey, that turbine won't be available for 2 years, so great, so it just
Yes.
dropped in priority. So you're probably, do you keep like a wall chart how do you keep track of which one is which priority, or do you just have files in the desk that you?
There are spreadsheets that are used to look at the projects, so there's ways of prioritizing them and listing them. And that's a way of budgeting, but when it really comes down to pulling the trigger on a project, we run through a pretty standard process. There's, if it's for safety, we don't really think about it too much, we just do it. If it's an environmental regulatory requirement, we don't have to think about it a lot, we just go do it. But then you have all of these other projects that are competing on an economic basis, so we look at payback period, internal rate of return. In our regulatory accounting model, which is confusing and we don't really need to go into it, but we look at economically what's the best project. And we're doing that hopefully with the best numbers at the time, and they're better than the numbers we had when this thing was dreamed up 2 or 3 years ago. So, we have a new financial system, and I think at some point we'll learn how to use it, and all of that will be in there. But right now we're just using spreadsheets with all of these projects, and then running it through these models, and then asking for approval.
Which is, okay, so that actually is a really sort of a critical interesting. So the tool that you use, that you go to, it sure sounds like it's Excel.
Yes. It's
Okay.
all of that is Excel based. Even the financial model that calculates all the returns and present values, it's all in Excel.
Gotcha, which is fascinating because in the world of project management, there's all sorts of tools that have been designed and created for project management, right? Including the somewhat nefarious and often talked about Microsoft Projects. Do you use that at all?
We don't.
Okay.
And it's funny, the Microsoft Project really isn't robust enough for at least the construction. The world of the industrial construction has decided Microsoft Project's not enough. And we use something called Primavera.
Oh, okay, so there's another project track.
And it has essentially become the industry standard
Wow.
for
I
what
have
we
a
do.
comment, if I may.
Yeah.
The Florida West Coast section of IEEE
You're in the right
is
place.
constantly looking for a treasurer. May I recommend you for it?
No.
Good evening, sir. You made it.
Yes.
Excellent, congratulations.
Good evening, Alan.
Hi, I'm Patrick.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to report that we're joined by the other half of our project management team. So Patrick has been doing a yeoman's job here. So
There you go.
This is very
I'll just
good.
get the cookies
No,
and be done.
no. So Patrick, you've
lost the cookies,
been
yeah.
using this other project
Yes.
software.
Yes.
Okay, and I assume it's probably industrial strength and industrial scale and all that
Yes,
sort
and
of stuff.
industrial cost.
Industrial cost,
Yes.
okay. And how did you learn to use this piece of software? Gentlemen, could you have a seat? Maybe
Yeah,
just,
sure.
you don't have to be sitting
Yes.
in the whole time I'm on
Yeah.
it. It sounds like a complex, and I bet, it's really a core part of your job to
Mhm.
use this thing. Do they send you to training? Is there a dummies guide? Is there?
Sink or swim.
Yeah, well,
Oh.
I fortunately don't have to do it anymore, right? We have schedulers who do that
Oh,
work.
that's fantastic. Okay, so
Which-
you've
so-
moved beyond.
But when I was a scheduler, I learned it, this will date me somewhat. I learned it in the old DOS version.
Oh, wow, okay.
I'm talking about Primavera. I don't know if you use it.
It's my love.
Okay. So now it's much
Shared
more
name.
user-friendly, but.
But I didn't learn it in DOS days.
Okay.
There we go. Windows 3.1.
Yeah, so, it allows, one of the things we do at Tampa Electric when we're we're doing a lot of projects in a power plant. A lot of them will be associated with an outage. In order to do the project, to install it, we'll have to take the unit down.
That's huge, okay.
So, and over the last about 10 years, we've done one large outage at our Big Bend plant, which is the big smokestacks on the bay, you can't miss it. We've done one or two a year, usually one, and they've ranged from, say, $60 to $90 million in scope. And we're trying to get it all done during a 45, 60-day outage. So it's a very intense period, maybe 1,300 craftsmen showing up at the site for a few weeks.
Wow, that's almost like a ballet, probably, right? It
Yes.
starts organizing and sequencing.
So, and they're all, maybe we have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 contractors, and they're all coming with their own schedules. So a tool like Primavera allows us to integrate them all.
Oh, wow.
See, and then there's interferences, right?
Right.
You're in my way, I'm in your way. I can't start until you finish, that kind of thing, and all of that gets logically linked in the tool.
Do your vendors use Primavera also?
Yes, it's a contractual requirement.
Okay, so you can basically draw in whatever plans they have and create like a
Yes.
master suite plan, and then they can go
Yes.
link, you've got a problem.
Yeah,
here.
we end up with one schedule of all of these,
With all the little ones stuck in.
yes.
Wow, that sounds really, really powerful, I mean, when it works.
Yeah, it's very, it's a very labor-intensive effort to get it, to build it,
Yes.
to check it all. But we're talking about, I don't know how many thousands of activities, but if you printed the whole thing out on 8.5 by 11, you're talking about a little book, it's a lot. So there's a lot of work that goes into making sure it's right and then trying to optimize it. And
Then it's a matter of, I guess, executing, making sure that it's actually.
yes, yes, and it's used, during an outage, it's used at a minimum on a daily basis. It's updated every single day, what's the
Wow.
progress,
Ching, 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 ching.
and are we ahead, are we behind? If we're behind, what are we gonna do?
That's fascinating. I've heard so much about Microsoft Project. I hadn't even dawned on me that it was lightweight compared to some of the big projects that are out there. Well, very good. Excellent. Patrick, thank you so much.
I want to make a couple comments as far as Primavera project is. Most people, you're going to run into project. Because quite frankly, the project at what, $200 a seat, Primavera 5K a seat, $5,000. So I was actually surprised that you'd actually have a contractual requirement that have to use Primavera. I can understand it because of the linkage. Primavera project also you can do is you can set up sub-projects. So you could actually have your different contractors, they can have their own little schedule to link it into yours, depending on what kind of access control or access permissions you give. Your contractors can actually come in and look at their piece, never see the other contractor's pieces, but their piece will dynamically shift. This can happen either, the project doesn't give you as many controls, okay? In Primavera, you are defining every single field that you're going to use. I mean, it is a massively fantastic tool from that standpoint. Where Microsoft beats their pants off, because they do, they sell more of the lower cost project, is they're saying, we're just going to tell you, here's a resource dictionary, and you got to put it in our manner. We're going to assign what's called a unique identifier number, a UID. We're just going to default assign it to the project. Where in Primavera, you define that thing. So, as a program manager, project manager when I was introduced to it, why would I like Primavera, which is so labor intense? Let me give you a little background, because I'm sure you had a chance of introduction. So, Alan Gossens. I'm an engineer that went into program management, project management, came out with a bachelor's in engineering, and then got my MBA, et cetera, et cetera. I was introduced to Primavera while I was in a function of being a deputy engineering manager, so that's a project manager of sorts.
Who were you working for at the time?
It started off as being Sperry Microwave, which was then picked up by Hercules Aerospace, which was then picked up by Atlantic Systems. Yeah. So, and the project, the program, huh?
No use in saying.
Yeah, I say the program.
Was there a question, I'm sorry, in the back there, sir?
Just briefly, I didn't hear your name.
Alan Gossens. And I got business cards.
Gauzens.
Yeah, like a roll of gauze with an NS. But,
Anyway, so you're working for him.
so I was working for him, and the reason why Hercules picked up our single facility out of the whole of Sperry was for the project I was working on. But, so what was the benefit? The thing I was working on was gonna have 13 individual circuit card assemblies in it, plus mechanical structures and all that kind of stuff. we actually sat down and figured out what it took to start from concept to completing the test and delivering a circuit card. Broke that into 13 unique activities, and then just replicated them by circuit cards. Within Primavera, we could define a sequence numbering that was unique. And guess what? We put a dictionary out there. The last 3 digits were associated with the activity. I'm going to go from right to the left. The next 2 were the circuit card assembly number. Anybody working the project, if they saw this was activity, blah, 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 and it was 01013, that was circuit card 1, the 13th activity in the sequence. The other project managers, it started sinking in. So what we did, think in terms of WBS, that's exactly what we did in Primavera. We took and made the activity numbers in a WBS manner, so there was never a question when we had to summarize activities or progress reporting, it just naturally went up. So that's why I love it, but labor intense, you've got to have somebody that, you got to have a driver. I wasn't the driver, thank God for that, but you got to have somebody that's a driver. We're a project. You can toss a project to the project manager and say, okay, you're going to be responsible for this, just build this and sequence it and things like that. So there's a number of tools. I will tell you, as you go higher and higher in companies, and I can see how TICA would be a fantastic use of it. Companies working in development, Primavera probably doesn't pay off, to be honest. But companies that have many contractors that come and go, you can actually link it into the financial system. In fact, it's now owned by financial company.
Oh, is that true? Oh, wow, okay.
So it can tick and tie right into your financial system. So it's got a fantastic aspect from that point. And again, it's got some things where if you try to do resource management in project, you better define those resources exactly the same and everybody use the exact same resource dictionary, because if somebody makes a typo error and say you have Alan Fernandez working on this, and somebody puts him in A, capital F, lower E, and then somebody later on goes A, capital F, capital E, that's 2 resources. In Primavera, you can actually go in there and you can globally change those errors. And in project, you got to go task by task.
Alan actually hints at something that's sort of important. So I've done some project management casually for Verizon. What's interesting is that I was actually using Microsoft Project to keep track of all my project management stuff. But what was interesting is that as a project manager, I had to communicate with people who were not project managers, and people who wanted to know how the project was going and stuff like that. And none of them had a copy of Microsoft Project, right? So the ability to communicate where we were in a project, I could have sent them the project, and they could have seen, we're here, so many resources, but they didn't have the program, right? And you can't really print out, a program easily that somebody can consume from Microsoft Project. You'll get sheets and pages and different, and so it was a challenge to sort of, if everybody was tied in to a particular program, you could probably get summaries and reports and beautiful stuff like that. But I found it actually pretty difficult. If I was doing all my work in one program and everybody else didn't have access to it, all of a sudden there's a communication gap that made a lot of work for me to have to do. So Alan, you're growing up, you go to college. What kind of degree did you get originally, sir?
Everybody ready for it? I got a bachelor, this is way back in the days, Bachelor of Science in Electronic Engineering Technology. Okay? Back in the days when that was starting to hit the fan.
That's just, this is
It hit the fan in the negative way, and I will tell you, we sat down, when I came over here, they actually sat down and we went down course by course with them. And the only thing I didn't have was chemistry. Since then, the degree kind of got watered down some, things like that.
But you did not go to school to become a project manager?
No.
So you went out, you got a job, sir, I assume after coming out of school, doing what kind of things?
So I came out working on things in millimeter wave. 1979 is when I came out, and I go around interviewing different companies. My best offer is out of a company up in Illinois, Rockford, Illinois. A lot of snow. I'm from Miami.
Sorry about that. That's not a big change.
And I actually got where Harris and Sperry were in a bidding war against each other, not that made that much money difference. But what made me want to go to work for them, I come out and I'm sitting there and they're telling me about this project, and they mentioned that their IF, anybody that deals their IF is at 20 megahertz. And that just staggered me. I said, oh, wait a minute. I'm a ham radio operator also. 21 megahertz is one of the frequencies. I'm like, wait, your IF's at 20 megahertz? What's your RF? He said 94 gigahertz. That was it. I said, I gotta come work for these guys.
Cutting edge, cutting edge.
I've never studied this stuff. I'd have to go to school to study it, and so that's really what brought me in there, and it's a great run.
Excellent, that's fantastic. Now, somehow, you got into project management. How did that actually happen?
So how that happened, just doing different work, and actually, back at the time, the term project managers wasn't really a term. Team lead, everybody hear team lead, or you're the engineering lead. Well, nowadays they call that project manager. Well, in an engineering organization, they're gonna call you engineering leads and team leads. In the world of program management, project management, we look at you as a project manager, because that's what you're doing. Now, the one thing your department head, if you're in a matrix organization, might not be handing you is the budget. So you're short of really doing project management for that. But that's how I ended up getting into it, is I was doing my own design work, but I was curious about where my stuff went. So I wanted to know about the integration of my piece to somebody else's piece and things like that. Pretty soon, I found myself being the field test lead when we go out, because I was understanding how things were coming together. And in all honesty, that's how it started.
You slide into it, I guess.
No, I actually didn't slide into it. I was pissed off when I went into program management. Only because I was going for a position at the corporate headquarters, and the guy who was the program manager on the program I was the engineering manager on put in for it also, and he had a degree ahead of me. So then they came and said, well, do you want to be the program manager? Because you know the most about this thing. And I was running the budgets and everything, and I kept saying, why do we have a program manager if I'm doing everything?
Excellent. Well, that's good stuff. Thank you very much for sharing that. I greatly appreciate it. So, Patrick, so it's interesting because the title is, project manager. So the interesting question is, what are you actually managing? Are you managing your job today? Do you manage people, or do you just manage resources? Do you tell people what to do? Do they have to do what you tell them to do? How does that actually work out?
Those are good questions. At Tampa Electric, project managers don't have direct authority over the people on the project team. So it's a matrix organization. The reporting structure is up through departments. So the engineers are all reporting up to the manager of engineering. Construction folks are reporting up to the manager of construction. The project managers get people assigned to them. And the way I like to say it is, the departments tell them how to do their work. These are the specifications, how do you write a spec, how do you produce a drawing. All of that comes from the engineering department. What to do and when to do, it comes from the project manager. So the project manager is directing people to do things. He's involved in building a plan and then tracking them against the plan. And people need to take direction from the project manager. Unless it's an issue, if it really is an engineering issue, really is a construction issue, they need to go to their department line of authority for resolution of those types of things.
Gotcha. All right. So you're sort of sharing a responsibility, I guess, with the way you think about it, right? Because we all succeed together, right? Yeah. That makes perfect sense. And Alan, who do you work for today, sir?
Me?
You work for yourself? Are you self-employed? Oh, actually, formerly employed.
Formerly, right now, I've just finished a contract with Cobham Tactical Communications and Surveillance.
Excellent, fantastic. No matter what, that just sounds cool, right? So,
I'll just tell you, if you're in a subway, don't believe that there aren't cameras.
of course, there's always. Now,
There are no secrets anymore.
so back in the when you've worked on projects and stuff like that, have you managed people directly, sir? Were you in the same sort of structure as Patrick, or was it a little bit different?
No, it's the same basic structure. And all the time, the only person I ever managed directly was a deputy program manager or a deputy engineering manager. Just the way they had it structured. That was its own little department, which was interesting. But no, it was matrix, and that was my view of it. Coming in from the engineering side, I could see the value, the importance of that, because you employ people to be experts in what they do. And that's the project manager's view. I want the best expert for the lowest cost. I mean, that's the view of it. Where do they get the expertise? They're not going to get it from the program manager, because I'm not teaching engineering, I'm not leading engineering. program, or I'm leading a project. So it's important that they have that expertise or have that base for the expertise. So we go out with resource requirements. We don't say, well, we might say, I want Joe, but in reality, you come in and you say, look, here's what I need the resource to be able to do. So I know you got a related question in here, well, what if the resource isn't quite performing?
Right, yeah.
You know, sure, I can talk to the resource directly, and my habit is I do, you're part of my team, but if there's not a resolution, then I'm gonna be back at the supervisor saying, you know, you have a requirement to fulfill for this type of resource, and it isn't happening. I need you to step in here, you know. But as Patrick said, if there's a question, like the compliances, things like that, that's what your department is about, making sure of that. And so it's very important that those departments be strong in their expertise to help make the whole company successful and help the project be successful.
Makes sense. So, so Patrick, Alan sort of hinted at something. So, you know, we love projects. We love the projects start, and they go, and they finish, and we have the wrap-up party, and life is grand, and stuff like that. And we're sort of skipping over that ever so delicate. And I know it doesn't happen very often, but sometimes projects, you know, get off track. And, you know, a lot of different ways for that to happen. I guess they could start to overrun their budget. Something costs too much. And I guess they could also start, the big one, of course, is time. Something's taking too long, suddenly you start to slip and stuff like that. In your neck of the woods, or when you're working on your your 20 projects every year and stuff like that, when you start to have a project go sideways, when it starts, you no longer be able to finish on the date that you had told people that it was going to finish, for perhaps the price that you said it was going to. What do you do? Is it a good time to take a vacation? Do you try to get another project manager to take the project over and say, hey, it's all going good, but you just go ahead and you just have to see it to finish. There should be no problems. Or what does a project manager do when things start to go bad?
Well, I think, okay, so first, you need to have a monitoring and controlling program in place that's going to tell you something's starting to go off the tracks
So it's not a surprise.
in enough time that you can make some corrective action. So that's the first response, right? And we update our schedules weekly for all of our projects, and like I mentioned, for the outage period every day. So you can't, hopefully you can't lose more than a week in a week, right? So, although I've seen it happen. But, so that's the first response is, let's say you find out in a week's time, something's happened, and a vendor has told you, we're not gonna meet the delivery date, it's this. You pull the team together and you say, okay, what now? Are we gonna tell that vendor that that's unacceptable and they need to come up with a plan? They need to do that? You know, so what's plan B when they tell us this is the best we can do, we're already working around the clock? What are the workaround plans? We typically then go to the schedule and see, okay, what's all this logic look like? Can we redraw the logic and accelerate some other activities to make it up? If we do everything we can, and it's gonna be late, we have a monthly reporting and meeting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we have, every project has a report every month, and we tell upper management exactly what's going on. So there's not gonna be a surprise at the end of the project. We're gonna tell them, this is what's going on, you know, we're spending a little bit more, it's taking a lot, we tell them. And we're very transparent. We report bad news faster than we report good news. We're pretty cautious about
Okay.
reporting good news. Kind of save that for the end of the project and say, yeah, we did well on this one.
Gotcha,
So
okay.
that's what we do.
Excellent, well, that's very good. So Alan, I mean, I'm sure you've been in similar sorts of situations where things have started to go a little haywire. You know, we don't talk about ethics an awful lot, but I would certainly think that as a project manager, if things start to not live up to what they need to be, either in terms of cost or schedule or whatever else it is, you know, it's very easy perhaps for a vendor or for you or for anybody to start to take up, you know, non-ethical steps to get things back on track. Have you ever seen anything like that? Is that a concern when you start to see a project have problems that you have to all of a sudden have to, you know, double your vision and make sure nobody's doing goofy stuff trying to get the train back on track? Or no, that's not really a major challenge that you've seen?
Well, you've got a combination of things there. When you tie in things are off the tracks and ethical, and I'm going to treat the answer as two separate answers to it. The first thing, as Patrick's pointed out, is you build this schedule, And you need your team, or team leads as part of it, to make sure that what you've laid down is the most probable pathway to get there. Some of the things that program manager, project manager try to do is build in contingency, so that the first time, you know, the wheels start shaking a little bit, it's not gonna go off the tracks. You've got some room to deal with without bothering the team, other than, you know, coaching them, you know, okay, you know, what was the problem? And maybe, you know, if it's a roadblock, get it out of their way, or try to help with some suggestions, but coaching them to, you know, I've got my confidence, you know, that somebody will come to my office and tell me, oh, we're having this problem, and I know how much contingency I've got in the schedule. No, I don't tell you about that, because you're gonna automatically use it. That's just human nature. So, you know, you come in, and I've had people come in and say, we got this problem, da 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 da. And, you know, I'll ask them, say, okay, what do you think the solution is, and how long do you think it's gonna take? You know, the person might want 2 more days on what would have been a 1-week activity. Or we'll just say they want a week more. Let's get a little room. And I'll ask them, so, well, you know, instead of by next Friday, can you do it by Wednesday? I mean, if you can't, just tell me. Because our nature is, when we're gonna go report bad news, we're gonna try to put a little buffer in there. And 9 times out of 10, the individuals say, well, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. And they're gonna leave feeling, first, you know, a little lifted up. They got support. They didn't get crucified. They got support for it. And okay, they got a little challenge, but they can see it. And if it happened, and I've already known what's in my contingency now. Yeah, 2 different ways that you'll say, okay, either I've run out of contingency, or you see a trend. This is just expanding, okay? So that's when you have to start looking ahead. And as Patrick talked about, maybe resequencing activities, but in the classic terms we call fast track, paralleling of some activities. But as a program manager, I think it's very incumbent on the program manager to monitor the team. Because in some cases, we've had issues where, you know what, the only way to recover was 60 hours a week. And not just for this week, and not just for next week, and not just for 3 weeks, for 2 months. But you know what, productivity really drops. And so to kind of like monitor the team, because they'll keep trying to do it. And you know what, they'll be there for 60 hours. But you start fading back. You start getting 54 hours worth of productivity out of that. And you don't have to physically measure it, you can actually start seeing it in the team. And so, you know, nothing better than being a program manager, being able to declare, you know what, guys, we're not working this weekend. And they're all like, we've got to do this. If your team productivity is down, and that's so, as opposed to answering ethics, first I'm answering about getting the team worn down. Okay. So I'll go to the ethics side. I have to admit, in my time, I have tried to make sure that there are only ethical things that are happening. Yeah, that sounds like a good canned phrase. Seriously. I have seen people who have, will say, not been the most straightforward with the customer. And I try to make sure that I've got good relationships with the customer, such that they understand when I say, they call me and I say, that's interesting. That's a key word for a lot of my customers. That's interesting. And I'll say, you know, I really can't answer that. You know, why don't you call it back and just inquire a little more of that?
You got a question in the back, I think?
Yeah, on that line, can you talk a little bit about risk mitigation, and are the best project managers the ones that can see what the risks might be?
See the future?
It's a little bit like that. Yeah, I think.
So risks are unknowns, right? You're trying to prevent the unknowns from running your project off the tracks, because guess what? Some risks won't run it off the track, it'll kick it off the track, okay? And the best project managers and program managers can't see the risks. What they can do is implement and use their team to help them see the risks. Because you are not omniscient. As an individual project or program manager, you're not omniscient. You need the team to come in, and this is our best estimates, this is the best way we see, and then you go into almost a version of the 5 whys. So, well, what, and we'll turn into what's. Well, what could go wrong here? What do we think the risks are? And anybody that uses the word assumption, a good program manager wrote down that word, because the flip side of assumption is risk, okay? So you drill down with your team a little bit through that plan, and you get them to bring them forward. Here's what the risks are. And then as a team, you look at it, and if you utilize utilize a ranking system, whether it's the DoD's ranked 5x5 matrix or whether you use something more algorithmic that makes engineers feel good but isn't any more effective. You know, I say that because I'm on both sides of it. I've used both of them. And you review those on a monthly basis at least, and you go through, where are we now? But from a mitigation standpoint, so here's my risks, you're not done. You gotta sit there and say, so what can we do about those? What can we do to try to not have them happen? And so that's your mitigation steps. And then you have another question you have to ask. How soon will we know? What will be the trigger that might indicate to us that we're gonna head down that path to the risk, and it's not gonna become a risk, it's gonna become a reality. And that's what we don't want to have happen. And you have got to religiously, as a project manager working with the lead engineer, watch for that trigger point. When that trigger date, that trigger event comes, if you're not on the path, you need to seriously consider launching the mitigation. Okay, you can't wait for the risk to hit you, because then your schedule's blown. And if your schedule's blown, your cost is blown automatically.
So as a project manager, you're equipped with a series of red buttons.
But the engineers hate, well, the thing is, and the engineers hate all those questions. I'll admit, it's like toiling. When I do risk planning and risk mitigation, we have a 1-hour meeting to try to identify the risks. And then it's documented and sent to everybody that we have another 1-hour meeting to try to identify the risks. A week later, we have another 1-hour meeting. That'll take 1-hour meetings. Now, just hone it down. Now, if you don't have all that kind of weeks during the planning portion, yeah, those might come a little sooner. But we do not, in one meeting, try to identify the risk, identify the mitigation, identify the trigger point. It's because it's too much information trying to happen at once. And quite frankly, we're all humans, and people just want to get the hell out of the room. Sorry, get the heck out of the room. They want to get done with it. And so what you got is garbage in. So,
Bingo.
and that's all part of technique.
Very good answer to that one. And thank you very much for the question. That's a good question. So Patrick, we swing back to you. So, you know, we're engineers. We know the engineering sort of view of the world. We know what we do in our jobs on a daily basis. You know, we get assignments, we work on assignments, we turn them in, we get more assignments, and move on. So now we come back to you, sir, and you say, okay, so you're a project manager. Okay. Well, can you tell us what you do during an average job? Are there elves involved? Is there magic pixie dust at any particular point in time? Do you just, you know, is there a secret room you go to where you get like a full body massage every day and then go home? Or exactly what do you do during, shall we call it maybe sort of an average day if there isn't such a beast?
Yeah, I was hoping not to answer. It's very difficult to come up with an average day. There's so many aspects to a project manager's job, and I think that was one of the things that attracted me to being project manager. I mean, you're involved from the inception to the closeout. You get to dabble in the engineering, construction, and the procurement, and safety, and the environmental permitting. I mean, it's you're responsible for getting the whole thing done.
Right.
So I guess in general, you know, I feel like the project manager probably spends most of his time either planning, ensuring that other people are planning, or monitoring what's going on against the plan.
How many projects do you have going on at a given point in time, sort of on average? Is it like primarily one?
Per project manager? Or,
Yeah, sort of for you, maybe. might be the best
well,
one. Or are you just an abnormal?
they all report to the
I
right, so I got the
understand.
whole, but,
You got the whole sheet.
it's probably in that 20 range per project.
Okay, all right, so that's a lot of, I mean, just even
It
an
is.
8-hour or even a 10-hour day, just staying on top of 20 moving parts is, you
Yes.
know, you're what, a half an hour per project or something strange like that?
Yeah, we tend to stretch them a little bit thin, and there are some project managers who only have one, right? So, so there's some others who have more, but we look at the complexity and size of them. If you're replacing a pump, it's not that big of a deal. If you're building a new process, there's a lot more to it. So, you know, what the project manager is not doing, is not designing, is not making calculations, not checking calculations. probably not producing very many project deliverables, no specs, no contracts, but probably reviewing all of them. Probably reviewing specs, reviewing contracts, negotiating contracts, and doing a ton of communication. Or you want the project team to be working well together, and that's not that easy. And it requires an awful lot of communication, and good communication, effective communication. And so, again, we try to tell people that following up is waste. You really shouldn't have to follow up,
Right.
but in reality, humans aren't that dependable. And so a lot of what a project manager does during the day, I think, is following up. Did you really do what you said you were gonna do yesterday?
So Patrick, once again, I'm still sort of mentally sort of trying to wrap my head around this. It seems as though in your world, it's almost like, I don't know if that's the right phrase to use, you're doing a lot of task switching. If I have 20 projects assigned to me and I come to work on a Wednesday, it seems like, from 8 to 9, I'll be working on one project, and then I'll task switch to another project. And what's interesting is, that other project may have different vendors and a different site and maybe a completely different type of project. I'll work on that for an hour, and then I'll task switch once again to maybe something that's in a foreign country, or so it seems like from a mental point of view, as far as what you have to do as a project manager, is you have to be, make sure the phrases are compartmentalized. You have to be able to pick up, work on it, and then put it down, and then move on to something else and leave it behind.
There's definitely things like that. There are also other activities that project managers do where they're organized in such a way that you can do all the projects at once. So in other words, we update all of our schedules together. So when the project manager and the scheduler are in schedule update mode, they're hitting all the projects at once. And when they're reviewing the cost forecast before they're issuing their monthly cost update, they're doing all the projects. So there's a little bit of where you can kind of get rid of that that awful multitasking kind of environment.
So Alan, you had mentioned that you had just completed a project that you've been working on and stuff like that. Let me ask you a real quick question. So you showed up to work on that project, dropped in off the face of the moon. How did you start? Did you just show up and say, hey, I'm the project manager, can I see your Gantt chart? Fantastic, let's go from there. Or did you have to really define the project for that particular company? I'm sort of asking, how do projects start? I guess maybe is a better way to say it. If you've got a good example with that or something else, I guess somebody high up in the organization says, I'd like to do this and I'm willing to fund it. And then eventually it flows down to a project manager and they say, you're in charge of the blue widget project. Well, you're not going to design the blue widget. You don't have specs for the blue widget. Again, you're the project manager for it. And I think you're supposed to say how long it's going to take to produce a blue widget and how much it's going to cost. How do you go about doing that?
Well, from one aspect, I've done that, which comes from the proposal stage phase. The current project or program had already been won when I was brought on. But
so does that mean that they knew how much it was going to cost and how long it was going to take because they had some sort of proposals in place?
they knew how much they thought it was going to cost and how long they thought it was going to take. Let's put it that way. And they had something they call a schedule.
Okay.
As it was, so it was brought into a company where they're kind of small and very light in the project management area.
We know about that.
Yeah. So from that aspect, I'm picking up something that was built by someone else.
Understood.
Classic for program managers or project managers, first thing you're supposed to do is go examine it, figure out what you think it's going to cost, and go get with your sponsor and say, well, this is great, this is what you guys think it's going to be, this is what I think it's going to be, and we're going to work to try to make sure that whatever is the better picture, because you may come in and say something lower. Right. And, but in this case, it was, go make it happen. Jean-Luc Picard, make it so. So I went in there and basically examined their budgets, examined the schedule, had a little bit of a angst on the first day. At the end of the first day, I'm sitting in the comptroller's office and learning that is the first cost plus fixed fee job they've ever had.
Okay, let's think about that for a moment, just for my own edification. Cost plus fixed fee, what does that mean? That means they say how much it's gonna cost them $1 million, and they run over that, they eat it, or what does that actually mean?
So what it means is, no, if they overrun it, they piss the customer off, the customer pays and won't order again.
Okay, all right, so it's a one-off.
But it's not a fixed price. Fixed price, all your costs are within your company, and you're dealing principally with internal management, trying to figure out where you are on your margins and things like that, and that's what you're managing to. You're managing a lot of things, but the bottom line is you're managing to the margins, because every company, you want a job, companies are in the world making profits. So they employ people so they can make profits. If they don't make profits, go look for a job somewhere else because they're not going to be around. And that's the bottom line. So, but on a cost plus fixed fee, your customer is sharing in the risk of the cost, which then means they cap how much fee you get. It doesn't mean that if it costs more, you get more fee. No, that's what the word fixed fee means. They turn that fee percentage at the time of award, they turn it into a dollar number. You will never get more than those dollars, no matter how much it costs you to run it. And if you're with the government, 8% is the maximum fee you will ever get. Okay, 9% maybe. It's the maximum you'll ever get. Most companies are not interested in working on 8-9% jobs. They want double digits.
That's my profit margin?
That's your profit margin.
I
That's
didn't
it.
know that. Okay, so government projects, I'll make 8% if I win the deal.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if it's $1 billion, that's a lot of
Depends on how you
money.
manage it.
Right, if you have it come in on cost, if it overruns, then your percentage is being diluted, okay?
Oh, okay, all right.
Because you're not getting more dollars.
But you're spending more time,
You're spending more time and money.
All right.
So you're diluting your percentage, and in fact, what happens is if you have to kick over a fiscal year, say the whole project was to be done in fiscal year 1, and you're in fiscal year 2, you're getting no profit in fiscal year 2 because you got it all in one. So now the CEOs really want to know, what are we doing spending time on this, and why are you behind, and why are you running more, because I'm not getting any profit on this.
Government will cover your costs, but they won't give you any
Right.
profit.
But that doesn't mean it's not automatic. When you go back and report it to the government, and I'm off track here, but when you go back and report it to the government, their option is to say, yeah, it's just fine, just shut it down. They don't have to pay the cost. The project is done under various different scenarios, and one of them is you're out of money, you're out of schedule, the other one is you actually deliver the product.
So on the one that you're working on, so how did you get started on it?
So how I got started on it was actually, first thing I did is met with the leads of the matrix organization over the team to get an understanding of where they saw this project, where they saw it going, what they see as the strategic importance of it. Learned that they saw it very highly of strategic importance. But that's where I also met with contracts and finance to understand how they were treating it. So I'm going to stop for a moment and tell you that in my book, I have a definition difference, and I don't know if TICO does, between program management and project management.
Here we go.
Project management deals with, this is your assignment, this is your assigned thing, this is what you're going to do. Program management, a lot of times, is the facing person to the customer. Also is dealing with contracts, and contracts is getting their instructions from the program manager. When do we report certain things? In well-structured companies, it's going to kind of be automatic. But in a lot of the smaller companies, it's not. They need somebody to tell them, when do we have to get that report together? When do we have to tell the customer that we are going to be 75% spent? And the contracts guy just waiting for somebody to walk in the door and tell them that. Finance, in this case, their first ever cost plus fixed fee, and I'm sitting there talking with them, and I said, so by the way, how are you going to compute the usage rate? And she tells me, and I said, that's wrong.
That's an ugly day.
So it wasn't an ugly day. She was actually interested in knowing why, because I had been exposed to that enough to take that from certain curiosity as an individual. So I knew how the calculations had to be, because guess what? Being a facing individual, I had to. When I'm sitting in the meeting with the customer, okay, so one of the first programs when I was program manager I'm running, we were burning $1.5 million a month on one program. We had 100 and some odd people working across sites all over the country, pulling this thing together. And son of gun, when you're sitting there, it's the colonel on the other side of the table. He asks the program manager the questions, and he doesn't want the finance person answering it. He wants the program manager answering it. So you've got to have some familiarity with some of the different things, and just over time, there's certain things, the technicals of how they do calculations. I'm not going to get into that, but I'll give them the answer and I'll say, let's have Joe over here answer this question, answer the details of it, because your finance person wants to know, and you just start picking that up. So going back to it, so that was day one. I had met with each of the different functional areas just to get my impression of it.
Communication thing.
Communication. Patrick was correct. That's the number one thing for program managers, project managers. But from there, it basically was making sure that I felt comfortable that the team at least knew what they were supposed to be doing, that was already on the job. Because that's gonna kinda answer how much cost concern do I think I have, because if I got a room full of engineers just sitting there drinking coffee and saying, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do, that's the problem, so I'd have to address their scope and their assignment, and be whacking on their manager saying, why don't they understand what they're supposed to be doing? Where my issue was the integration, the schedule, the activities that people were doing, and making sure that it was gonna be aligned properly to be able to deliver the product on time. What I learned very quickly is that project file was a beautiful shell.
It looked good.
Things were not linked within it, and there were not people in the company that knew how to define a critical path. So I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh. I used to have a person that I could say, let's go do this. I don't have a person here. So I said, from my education with Primavera, I knew how to do critical paths, but I was like, okay, here we go. So I actually was doing some lower level functions for a while.
Now, so let's go ahead and just for edification, let's just define what is the critical path? What is a critical path? How would you define that, sir?
It is the longest path. Once you have everything properly logically linked, it's the longest path. Okay, the longest pole, if you will, to get from where you are to where you have to be at the end of the project.
So if I put together all the different things that have to be done, this is the maximum amount that it's gonna take, right? I might get lucky, things might get shorter, but this is basically what I should be telling people as far as when it's possibly gonna get done.
Right.
Okay, all right.
Yep. So,
And the activities on the critical path are the ones you probably pay the most attention to.
Because they're gonna affect whether it stretches or
Yes.
shrinks.
Yeah, if one of them takes longer, then your project's gonna take longer.
So that's a lot of stuff going on, but those are the things that you keep your focus on, basically. Okay, cool, I just wanted to double check, make sure we're all on the same page there.
I have a
So-
question. for you.
Oh, there are questions?
Actually, it's a double-sided question.
Oh.
I'm permanently.
Yeah.
how you doing, Herb? A long time since we've seen each other.
It's very days. There's two ways things. First, how does the critical path interact with the project itself and also with the work breakdown schedule, WBS, and the requirements management? And that, it's actually a three-sided question.
Yeah.
The project itself and those three areas, how do they interact with each other and how do they become embedded within the schedule?
So, if you want to jump first in. So, first of all, the WBS is that's just breaking down and defining your product. It does show you, if it's well constructed, it gives you an idea of how you're going to bring the pieces together integrated wise. But it also has a breakdown of each element. When you get down to the lowest level, the work package in the WBS, then you need activity lists. In other words, what's it going to take to deliver that work package? That activity list, burn down list, whatever you want to call it. Here's the 10 items I got to do to make that work package happen. Those items should appear in the project schedule. Okay. Now, if you've got a bunch of one-day things, yeah, you try to put them together. Let's get real. We're not going to ask you daily to do a percent complete on something. So the WBS supports the activities that need to be in the schedule. Okay. You build your schedule from there, and then you basically have to interrogate and do what I'll call logical linkage. You get a critical path, but then you should always go back and say, well, does that critical path really make sense? Do we really think that, do we have to wait for activity X, Y, Z over here before we can start A, B, C here and start finding, well, no, not really, that was just a convenience link, okay? So that's how that relates to a critical path or building schedule. The requirements, that's another list of what does the product have to do, whether it came from your specifications, some requirements or contractual requirements. And that's just a list of things you have to accomplish. So somewhere you better have a requirements matrix and a requirements traceability matrix, and make sure that each of the items on the requirements somehow relate to an activity that's in your project file. They do not drive your project file, nor does the WBS drive your project file. This is information that builds so you have a proper project. So then as you go along and you accomplish activities, you should be able to go back to these lists that you built and be able to verify that you did accomplish that requirement in that activity step that you said you were going to at the beginning. And if you've done it, then the project manager, program manager should be saying, well, then we can't close that activity. Why didn't we get this accomplished? We didn't do something technical that we were supposed to do in this activity. And so you gotta interrogate that. It doesn't drive the critical path, but it's input to it, input to this project.
One more question, respect. Would you say that then the duties of the program manager itself or himself are associated directly in some way with the duties of the systems engineer?
I would tell you from a program standpoint, they're similar, but it's not a systems engineer. So the similarity is, there's three key items that the program manager is watching, right? Cost, schedule, and performance. Those are, and there's other elements around that, okay? So there's an integration point that's happening here on a cost, schedule, performance side. Getting that performance done, there are so many pieces, moving pieces technically with that. The systems engineer is doing something very much in parallel. Systems engineering, depending on how you define it, can just be a very requirements-oriented type thing, or it can be requirements and integration. Requirements, integration, and test and verification. You know, different companies have a definition of how they use systems engineers. Point is, they're like the juggler that's getting all these technical things. The program manager project is the juggler that's trying to take the input from here along with that cost and schedule and risk. And the two of them meet on risk.
Very good. Now, we're coming towards the tail end of our program tonight, but there's an important question I wanted to ask, probably both of you gentlemen. Patrick, let me start with you here. You know, I'm vaguely aware that there's a type of certification for project managers called, I think it's PMP, Project Management Professional, and you know, I've seen online ads, I guess, become PMP, take the PMP test, you know, become all that sort of stuff like that. Are you a PMP certified one? Is there any value to this? Do you hire people who are PMPs? If I was an engineer working right now, should I look into getting my PMP certification if I wanted to get into the world of project managers? What's your viewpoint, sir?
My viewpoint, well, I am certified.
Okay.
I think the credential has some value from a marketing standpoint. There are companies out there that only hire people with the credential. We don't happen to be one of those companies. We have it on our project manager's job description as a preferred credential, understood, but not required. Having gone through it and having had a number of project managers go through it in different ways, I would say, if you're not a project manager already, it's really not for you. You can still go take the test, you can still get the credential.
Oh, wow.
But,
Okay.
and it's a way maybe to become familiar with it, but really the credential is, in my mind, is meant for the experienced project manager who already knows it, who is now learning what the PMI, the Project Management Institute says is the way. You know, there's a lot of ways to manage a project. They give you their way, it's the way. You learn their terminology, you learn their order of events.
But you should
And
be
there are a
nodding.
lot of
I guess you
very-
should be nodding when you're learning that.
Exactly,
I
you
know it.
already know it,
As
right?
opposed to, oh, that's
Yes.
what a project manager does.
Yes, you already know. So, and, you know, anybody in this room could go study for a little while and pass the test.
Gotcha, understood.
And I have some other experience with developing some, attempting to develop certification and credentialing programs. And they're all fallible. It's another data point, but to me, that credential, and maybe other than the PE credential, that one I think has more meaning to it than most. Because anybody who's got a little bit of smarts and is willing to work hard can go pass the test. You know, we could all probably, with some study, pass the test to be certified riggers and crane operators. And how many?
Yes.
Right? We could, and we would have a credential, but.
Oh, cool, that.
But how many of us really know how to rig and operate a crane? So that's kind of how I feel about it. I did it to check the box. Everybody who was working for me had done it, and I thought, hey,
All the other kids
do.
do.
Yeah, I did it too. So it looks good on the resume.
Alan, so you work in this environment, you work with, project PMI, PMP sort of folks and stuff like that. Do you have any sort of feel as to whether it's valuable or not valuable, or something for somebody to spend some time on? Any thoughts? Once again, we all have our own impressions based on, who we've encountered in our career and, what it means to us. Are you PMP certified, sir?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so you are, so you've gone through it. do you find it to be valuable when you're, you know, if you're looking to work with other project managers? Is it something you look for, or is
It's something that can set you a little bit aside.
okay? It's a plus.
And I'm gonna start by saying, well stated by Patrick, if you're not in the Board of Program Management, okay, it's gonna be buzzwords.
Gotcha.
You're gonna memorize some equations and buzzwords. I would put it similar to, yeah, when you got your driver's license, you weren't as good a driver as you are today. Now, were you? You needed to have that license to be able to get in that car and get on the road. You don't have to have that license to become a project manager, okay? So, and the exams don't teach you what project management is about, and the preps don't teach you what project management is about.
Teach you to pass the test.
When I went for my PMP.
No, that's fantastic, no,
Right.
that's really good.
So why did I go for my PMP? I had heard within my company that they were gonna start putting a focus toward, you know, program managers, because we had project managers and program managers. The program managers had to be PMP certified. And I thought, you know, I'm just gonna get ahead of this thing. The company paid for me to go to a crash course. And really why I went to the crash course, it was more about the lexicon. You know, BCWS, what the hell's PV? You know,
Right.
that it's their lexicon to pass the exam. So from that aspect, it's like the PE, okay? You can certainly, you know how to do it, but if you don't use their lexicon, you're not passing the test, okay? How they calculate different things. Activity on the arrow, activity on the node, calculated differently. I'm still trying to figure out what the hell is that about. But anyway, that was their lexicon, okay? So you had to know it. But by
And there's
having
some value to having a common lexicon, right?
Oh my gosh.
If your company's missing that, I mean, it's there. You can just take what they have.
Yes, and that is true, because if you have a company, or you work with a company that people flung all over the place, and if you've got the same credentials, you can automatically be talking in the same terms, okay? And if you're talking foreign terms, you can bring them to the same terms, and then let you go home to whatever your homegrown stuff is, but you can communicate. So, in regulated companies, I can see where there can be a value if that regulated company is looking for it. In defense companies, they don't so much push on the PMP. Some companies do. I mean, I've seen it out there where now they're starting to say, you know, either preferred, I've seen some that says required, not as many say required, but I'm seeing them start saying preferred because I think they're starting to understand. As well as PMI, come on, IEEE. PMI is out there trying to push that they've got a good thing going here, you know. IEEE kept pushing the IEEE standards, and hey, guess what? You know, defense actually gave up some of their standards and said go to the IEEE standards. So IEEE was successful as a company. It is a business also, let's understand. So they were successful from that standpoint. So I see it as a value for communication. I see it individually or personally as a value. So I'm out of this company and I'm out as a contractor. When I interviewed over there, they said, oh, and you're a PMP also.
There's a little something extra.
Right, yeah, well, something extra. So it has a value, but I'll also tell you, similar to this, give back. Give back to it. So yesterday I was over doing training, because we've got a PMP course going over in St. Pete. And so I'm doing training and using that lexicon.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, teaching the lexicon.
The other, just real quick, the other thing I would say, for those of you who are trying to help your companies move up the maturity model for your project management, that's a good place to go to see what does PMI say project manager's job is. Because there's, right, you can have a project coordinator, you can have a project administrator, you can have a project manager, and there's varying degrees of authority that are granted to project managers. PMI stands for the project manager, saying the project manager is essentially the CEO of the project, and if anything goes wrong, it's the project manager's fault, and you can hold the project manager accountable. But it's a place to go, and if you look at what they've written about it, you can help your company make some decisions. Where are you in the maturity model? What do you really want to? What kind of authority do you want to give your project managers? There's some value in that organization from that aspect.
Cool. Gentlemen, we're reaching sort of the end of our time that we have tonight, but we have two obviously skilled and talented project managers here. So before we wrap things up, I wanted to give you one more chance. Do we have any questions? Anything floating to the top of your head, sir? This is your one opportunity to do so. I saw a hand up, sir. What do we got?
So there's been a new kid on the block for the past 2 years, right? And then his name is Agile. Agile methodologies, and Scrum, and all these different things. Has that impacted your industry? How do you see it today?
I would say it's impacted my industry from the standpoint that DoD doesn't know how to deal with it, and it's been abused, buzzword. Okay, it doesn't have enough good standards to it. I hate to. It sounds like I'm throwing down on it because in concept, it's great, but what it does is it makes that accountability portion very difficult because you can roll things out of a sprint into another sprint. And that violates all these financial accountability things where you define scope to a defined piece. But I will tell you that industry, a lot of industries are heading that way. If you get out from under the regulated industries, a lot of software companies, my God, that's where they are, agile. If you're gonna be in software and you're not agile, go learn what it's about. Because you're gonna be hearing about it, you're gonna be hearing about sprints, Scrum, all this kind of stuff. Understand what it is and then jump in, go experience it because it is fruitful on the software side. I see it great.
And I wouldn't say anything negative about it, I would just say it doesn't necessarily fit with the regulated utility, right? We do not want to be cutting edge, very conservative. We want to deliver power reliably. We want to keep our rates low. That's, we're totally focused on those things. We don't want to be serial number one on anything. So, we're just not we're not going to be cutting edge company.
But I think you'd agree that one of the areas from the company's standpoint, if they're not looking at it, that whoever figures out how to make that work, they're gonna bust the chops of everybody else until they figure out that model.
One of the interesting things about, Agile is that Agile assumes that the person who's making the request for the product or the service doesn't know what they're actually talking about. In other words, the requirements are dynamically changing. And that's the whole purpose for it, right? You produce a little bit, you show it to them, then you get some feedback, you produce a little bit more, et cetera, et cetera. In the regulated energy business, they've been doing it for a long time. I have a feeling they probably have pretty good, pretty solid requirements that don't change. Build a nuclear power plant. Well, we're not really planning on changing that requirement anytime, just because it takes so. So it definitely in software, there's a real value to it and stuff like that. But and you make a good point there, Patrick, that in certain industries, it may not be nearly as applicable. It may apply to some smaller projects or some more dynamic things, but maybe in some of the larger ones, whatever.
So what, on this last project that I was working, the last program I was working, we had an app development that had to occur. And we had a user, we had a customer, and then the user. And the user is the one who has to really like the app. And yeah, they start off with some very broad things. So what I did is, as a program manager, I said, okay, look, start, finish, it's got a budget, go do your sprints inside of there. I can only measure you at the output, the input and the output on this. It was a small portion of the budget. So, it would make a couple of tick marks of a few percent on the total budget. So I can live with that kind of risk that they kind of go haywire for a little while. And customer loved it. It was a DoD customer, but okay, so it's SOCOM, they're kind of into that world of, I kind of define it as I go. But they love it.
Excellent.
But yeah, the hardware development, boy, they want to see that baby ticking and tying.
That's right. Yeah, we got that. See, it's wonderful. Excellent. Are there any more questions? Okay, got one here.
So, poorly planned projects can basically end up leading a lot of firefighting. So, for a company that's really early in the capability maturity model, what can we really do to help avoid that?
To help avoid fire.
Basically, just like have it, to help plan our projects better. Well, what steps should like a small company take at that point?
I think a subtlety to what he's saying, because we discussed this before you arrived on, is that he works for a small company that doesn't actually do other project managers. They don't have a project manager. They don't have a formally defined project. They know that they probably should have one. The struggle that he finds himself in is that his company's looking to him to sort of manage a project that doesn't have a definition. It doesn't have phases, it doesn't have.
You get to say you're the manager.
It's just sort of like, we do it. It comes in, and we do some stuff, and then it goes out.
What's your projects?
No, right now I'm trying to start up the project management aspect. Like I'm trying to bring us to basically look at our capability maturity model and basically get to even level 2. Right now we haven't even gotten past level 1 yet.
What industry are you?
HVAC controls,
Sorry, you're.
controls, HVAC
So
manufacturing.
a project would be to do what?
New product development,
A new control system for an air conditioner.
yes.
So you would design it and then you would build it, test it,
Mhm.
prototype it.
Yeah, I mean, and we do some of those things, but it's not really structured.
Put your Gantt chart together.
Well,
Divide it into phases.
Yeah.
I guess one of
the thing is,
Work breakdown structure.
yeah, you can use a lot of the classical tools. The Gantt chart is the output of doing your
Yeah.
activities and sequencing, it's not an input. I guess what was throwing me is because you were talking in terms of CMMI also, and from my experience, I'd first say, unless somebody's requiring you to do CMMI, don't.
Okay.
Okay, it's a cost you won't recoup, okay? You can do the things that CMMI talks about, without having to try to go CMMI. What they really are focusing on is defining your processes. And you start with, what do you do? How do you do it? Okay, so that's more of a process focus.
Okay.
And what you're talking about is a project, and you're trying to rely on processes that guess what you don't have.
Right.
Okay, so you got two different things going on here. So you gotta figure out what part of the day you're gonna work on processes and what part of the day you're gonna try to work on defining a project. If you don't know what your deliverable is, I don't know how you, other than it comes in and we do some work and send it out.
So,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of things you can plan, right? You said you want to do good planning so you don't have firefighting. The most important thing to plan
Is our requirement.
is your scope.
Yeah.
What do you do? And so I would say if you're looking for point zero, that's it, plan the scope. And then the things that come out of the scope, as you learn how to plan your scope, the cost and the time and all the resource requirements, all that, you can start planning those maybe downstream. But if you don't start with a good scope,
So it sounds like what
And the
Bill
other-
is saying is start up here,
Well,
and then you work
sort
your
of.
way down.
But you're already doing some things, and I guess what I would say is,
Probably got some.
gather your lessons learned. What did you do on that last thing? Even though they all look like there's something, they're different maybe.
Uh-huh.
But what are your lessons learned? Because eventually what you're gonna do is you're gonna start getting to a root cause of why you're in a firefight all the time. And I'm gonna bet that part of it is not a good scope definition, so you really don't have a good definition of how long it's gonna take to do the work. All you know is when you get there, there's a lot of work to do, and it's more than you thought. So, yeah.
From the consultants network point of view, I would recommend that you contact one of our known consulting project managers on a fee for evaluation fee for your project. Bring it in, define its